All right. Okay, so it is our last evening together on this incredible journey. It's been, what are we, Thursday?
We are.
So 2 weeks ago exactly is when we left, right?
Yeah, we crossed the border.
Didn't we leave? Did we leave on a Wednesday night or?
We did, but we went to just outside London and to cross over earlier the following day.
On Thursday, yes,
Yeah,
on
'cause,
Canada Day.
we thought we needed to get over by a certain COVID test.
Which turns out we didn't even need.
We didn't need. So the reason we got across the border was I used my status card, and we talked about the fact that we were on a spiritual journey and there were ceremonies to go to, which was the Sweat Lodge at Eagle Butte was the first one for us, right? I don't know if we mentioned that in other.
I don't think so, because it was really hard getting across. Like it would have been, I don't think we would have gotten across had that not been the fact.
Yeah.
And also because I'm a dual citizen.
Yeah.
So we managed to get across for those two
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like in the past 2 weeks it's been like.
There we go. I'm like, should I be back further?
Yeah, we're fine.
It's been, it feels like a long time. It's longer. I don't know about
A
you
lot
guys.
has happened in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I love in particular about the last 2 weeks is how much I've had no expectations. Went into this not really knowing what was going to happen. And we knew, certain destinations and we had ideas about what might happen, but the connections I found, even talking with the most unexpected people, of having the most depth and compassion and connection, and I don't know if this is because post-COVID and people are realizing how vitally important it is for us to connect, and when that was taken away from us, we realized how much we need that and how much we crave that, and so even things like when we went to stay at that kind of glamping place in Hot Springs in Black Hills, like even having a breakfast and talking with that cook Tim, right, and hearing his story about how he rode his horse 4,000 miles by himself across the country, and just connecting with him and hearing his stories, and then connecting with the ranger at Greasy Grass, the Battle of Little Bighorn, like him, and hearing him compassionately tell the truth about Custard and what actually happened, and his understanding and perspective of it. But it was very much like, okay, well, this is what happened. Like, okay, colonialism happened, but what if it didn't? What if we'd worked together? What if, what would it be like now if we actually honored each other and started to what if those events it didn't happen that way, right? So I did mention to him after, I said, thank you so much for compassionately telling the history, and yeah, those kind of connections for me was particularly special. I really honored them, appreciated them.
Yeah, and well, for me, it's we can't quite get to that part of the story until the truth is uncovered, right? And so it feels like we're honoring where these battlefields, where these massacres happened, and what went on there. Custer dishonorably lied during a sacred ceremony. When we went to Bear Butte, right? When we're talking about the sweet medicine and the prophet and the ceremony there, like it was just all these horrific things happened to our ancestors, and going to these places, a massacre and the wounds, and then going into the communities and seeing the trauma, and we're still reeling from that. There's still so much pain surrounding all of that, and it's for me wanting to go in and just like what's happening in Canada as we unbury these graves, we need to completely open up and let our wounds be seen for what they are, And, you know, as these people brought compassionately brought to the true story out, you know, about what happened at the Battle of Little Bighorn. And so for me, it was going to all these places and being where the last stand was, where our warriors last stood up in battle, and going to the burial grounds of our leaders and honoring them, how they fought to the very end to preserve a way of life that is how I want to get back to living. I'm not a city girl. I want to be one with nature. I want to freely exist with our animal relations. I want harmony. And we can't get to that place of peace and harmony until we acknowledge our wounds. We can't reconcile a new beginning with first understanding what's happened in the past, which is actually very present today. And so, you know, we're in communities that are still very much in need of healing. And so, yeah, our work is okay, how do we create a platform? How do we create the necessary bridges to bring people together to do that healing? And that, you know, our wounds are actually very collective. Because as I do with my Truth and Reconciliation work with residential schools, you know, a lot of the non-Indigenous community was lied to as well. And the story involves all of us. So going to these different places and then coming into, you know, these last few days and into my partner's community, and yeah, doing a lot of land-based healing and you know, wanting to come and do some of the work that I do here with your family and your beautiful family and the community here. I know we have a lot of similar visions and ambitions, and it feels like everything comes full circle. So I had an idea how this journey was going to unfold, but yeah, there was little surprises, beautiful surprises, and things along the way that was, I don't know if I'll say unexpected, but yeah, it just they transformed into ways I guess I couldn't possibly have imagined. So
yeah, for me the journey was it was great to be invited along with you too, and I had a really enjoyable experience overall. I really enjoyed the sweat lodge portion of it, getting back to that after it's been a while since I've been in there, and so that really started the journey for me, you know, to travel from place to place and to look at the past and kind of really examine it. And I've learned so many things just along the way, just from interacting with you two, and in the way that you have so much knowledge about the animals and the birds and the feathers and these teachings, you know. To me that was really valuable as well, is seeing all these places. And looking back at the past it's difficult sometimes, and it does allow us though to gain a new perspective on the future, you know, like what you're saying, what you want to do with the communities now, you know, because a lot of us are still feeling the impact of these horrific events. Intergenerational trauma is still taking place in my community here on the Flathead Reservation. And so I have a lot of ideas of what I think we could do in the future, you know, seeing what Joseph is doing with his boxing club, you know, it's really, really nice, and it makes me want to have something here, sweat lodges for, you know, these young men, to give them these teachings, and then to have something where they can express themselves physically, you know. That's important, you know, because a lot of the times there's not a lot on reservations, just given the locations that they're at, you know. So definitely making me think of the future at this point, you know, where we go from here.
And it feels like we're having to go back, right? Like that's, I think what hit me the most at our sacred medicine wheel site is we need to go back to those ways, you know, those sacred ways of just honoring the earth and our relationship to the planetary systems, and being so respectful of, you know, everything around us and everything deserving as much entitlement as a place of equality as everything else. We're at that road, that fork of the eighth fire prophecy, and would have loved to have been able to connect with Chief Rival Looking Horse, this trip, and really hoping we get him on our podcast. But as a descendant of a Sitting Bull, who is one of my favorite leaders of all time, and but getting back to this extremely beautiful way of life that was almost completely destroyed. We're all reeling now, especially I think we've learned that through COVID and everything else, to get back to those simpler, sacred ways of living with each other and the planet. And I think that's always been my heartbreak about the soul wound we carry as Indigenous people, is we had such a beautiful way of life, and as we go through these museums and we read about these wise words of our old chiefs, we never wanted to assimilate to anything different. We truly believed in being one with the land, and needing to find a way to coexist together. And so now it's almost like, how do we fix and repair and almost unwind the clock? So it
kind of goes back to what that man was saying at the, okay, well,
yeah, what
can we do? How can we coexist, honor each other, respect each other, live together and in harmony, but also in unity, right? And I think that's what I found, both in humility, but also in honor of being a part of this and visiting, Eagle Butte and speaking with Joseph and being part of that incredible sweat lodge and ceremony with, these ancestors of, the last kind of true warriors who were fighting for that way of life, right? And
the warrior today has to be different.
It has to be different, but
yet we can't do it. That way doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't, but the energy does, the consciousness, the spirit is still there. But okay, well, we need to tap into that. And I find that as a European American Canadian, it's like, well, how can we? I can't deny my past, right? And I'm very proud of my family. I'm very proud of where I've come from. I'm very proud of who I am. But there is part of that, I have to acknowledge the fact that it was part of this colonialism, even though I personally didn't take part of it. But there is, I think, the more that we can kind of bridge and help people understand the importance, understand why it's important, and then experience it. Because when you're disconnected, when you're like, oh well, look at those people, they're doing their ceremonies, their sweats, and that's kind of, it's so easy to kind of pass it off as non-important because you don't know what it feels like. You don't know why. You don't understand why it is so important to reconcile, right? And I think perhaps that's when I speak to people and when I see, and as a healer, as a spiritual healer, I understand deeply how trauma affects us. And when it's so deeply rooted in this land, I mean, in everything, right? How can we grow a sustainable, healthy society long term if the roots, or not the roots, but you know what I mean? Like if there's so much trauma that hasn't been discussed or healed or reconciled, and it's hard to understand how we could move forward in any positive way, if that makes sense.
Well, it's about, acknowledging, it's not acknowledging past wrongs, it's acknowledging what's wrong now today and how we all contribute to it in some way. There's a communal responsibility right now to understand our story and help us write a better one. It's not, for me, it's never been about a past thing. And that's why, when Truda set aside chapter, I'm like, this is very much today. The way our systems exist today are very oppressive to Indigenous people still to this day. And so we as a collective need to educate ourselves better. And it's not just books. That's why I actually journey and want to visit spaces and feel energy and listen to the people. We need to hold space for everything around us, because reserves are usually tucked away into places and people keep a blind eye. So for me, it's very much, it's a time of communal responsibility to educate ourselves and figure out how we all play a role in this, and what can we do together.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
But I also think there needs to be a kind of a compassionate understanding of why people are still hurting. Why,
Oh, well, yeah.
like, why are, why can't you just get over it? Or, I feel like there's been so much skipping over of that, and there's so much white guilt and everything like that, that if we don't acknowledge, talk about it, and then
well, had you not
heal
joined
it.
in, you wouldn't have been privy to that, right? Like, you were
No.
pulled right into the space.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
I'm experiencing it, and I'm seeing the effects, and I'm understanding, and I'm feeling.
You're
feeling
yeah.
how it's truly, what's happened has truly affected so many people, and then it's just this domino, right? So, I mean, it's been extremely humbling, but also a little bit overwhelming, right? Because it's like, where do we start? Well, we start here. We start by talking, right? We start by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and facing those fears, because it's very uncomfortable.
Very vulnerable. Because, society as a whole these days is very avoidant. And so, these traditional ceremonies bring us into our pain. Right?
Yeah, I think the revisiting of the rituals, because you're essentially doing exactly what your ancestor has done before you. It's, if you think about it, it stretches back into time. You become part of this time sequence. So preserving the rituals, revisiting those rituals, continuing those, it makes you understand that everything matters. When you think about the ritual, like, the way you act, the things you say, there's a sequence involved. It makes you want to take responsibility for every action. And I think a lot of people need some hope, because a lot of people think that nothing matters at all. They feel hopeless. But if you're doing rituals on a daily basis, you realize, well, when I wake up and when I say a prayer in the morning, it should be done in a good way. And you start going down that path where you take responsibility for all your actions. You can clean yourself up, and then maybe help, your brother, your sister, or someone else. You start to help them, take responsibility, think more about their actions, and then it will go out from there into your family, and then into your community, and it just will spread. So that's what I think about the rituals and the culture.
Yeah, I do think it takes a collective effort, like coming together, and not just us and them, right?
Well, there is no us and them.
There is no us and them, but
and that's the thing, right? This, why I go back to the medicine wheel teachings, is we're all interconnected, interrelated, and that's that. We all need to have that epiphany, and with acceptance and humility, see our roles that we all play in weaving a new future.
Medicine wheel for me was nice to know that our ancestors had been there in that location and had looked at the stars and had looked at the sun and had said, let's align these rocks in this way to mark it. Maybe we don't know exactly why we're doing it, but you could feel that there, that the purpose was there, and it felt good to be there and to be a part of it and to look at it and to know, that you were a part of that as well. That was very powerful for me to stand up there. Yeah.
That was huge for me too.
I think that's a key word, is purpose.
Yeah.
Feeling like there's a purpose to what you're doing. There's a purpose to who you are, to what you do, it's, I mean, if you don't have purpose within yourself, then it's easier to get lost, easier to fall off track. It's easier to feel disconnected.
That's why, again, get to those rituals, right? Those daily rituals of keeping you in alignment, keeping you grounded. And again, why I can't speak enough to our sacred ceremonies is, dive right into the work that we need to do, as we're spiritual beings first and foremost, right? So they all break away the physicality of what it means to be human, to get back to that fire, that flame, and that purpose, and remember who we are and why we're here.
And it's kind of reconnecting with that warrior in a new way.
Yeah. So it's a new warrior, but it's ancient warrior mentality, right? Like so we're not on the battleground fighting with our bows and arrows really anymore. We need to be the warriors in the sweats and in the schools and on this, the up at the mic and in so many different ways. So
the bows and arrows can be metaphorical,
absolutely
used in a different way, setting your direction, where your purpose is going, what you're, who you're helping, what your target goals are, and those kind of things. So.
Or why we went to Standing Rock, right? Like we're protectors, peaceful protectors, who had to stand up against abuse, right? Like just people standing there in prayer, making a stand, and that's the warrior right there. So a lot to reflect on. I'm glad I have this time with your family and this beautiful land. We had a nice walk today.
We did, yes.
On the land, and again, eagles, hawks. We saw a bear finally.
We did see a grizzly.
Safely from the car.
And we saw something today. We're not entirely sure what it was.
We really wanted to know, but at the same time didn't want to have to do the work to find out. It was a little bit scary because we were out on the land. So
definitely a bear and mountain lion territory.
Yeah, and it was definitely those colors.
Yeah,
so.
And then we heard wrestling in the, we didn't.
But it felt really good being out on the land here, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
It truly is.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Thank you for welcoming me into your home and
hope
meeting your family.
Hope to see you again. Obviously, I'm sure Deli extended an invitation to you.
She did. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And now I'm going out to connect with my family at our kind of family cottage that my grandfather started. So that'll be nice, to connect with those roots as well. So balance out the two for me is very special, and I'm really looking forward to that and honoring that side of my lineage as well. So it's kind of a wonderful way to end this spiritual journey for me. So.
Yeah. And we put up the teepee skirt tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's going to be special.
Yeah.
It is. I look forward to hearing about it. Yeah. And thank you guys for joining us. And it's wonderful sharing with other people as well.
Yeah, glad social media allows us to extend the invitation for others to journey with us. So hopefully something resonates. I know we will continue to have reflections as we process and things come to light. I know for me, I have lots to still think about. Yes. But yeah, that's it.
All right.
Bye guys. That's it.